and welcome to this edition of Inside Tacoma. I'm your host, Randall Lewis. Our guest for our conversation today, County Councilmember Marty Campbell. Welcome back.
Well, thank you very much for having me back here.
That was hard to get that out, County Councilmember. But that's what you are now.
Yes.
You were here and then you went away for a while and now you're back as a guy from the County City building. All right, so tell us what that's like.
I love it so far. It's been a little over a month now,
okay,
but it's been great. So I serve in the 5th County Council District, which overlaps a pretty good portion of the 4th City Council District, Eastside, South End Tacoma, but then further south, Midland, Parkland, Spanaway, and kind of the Summit, Waller, Clover Creek areas. So a big portion of it has many of the same issues that we faced in East Tacoma and the South End on Tacoma City Council, but also I have this new and unique rural separator, so I represent cows and horses. But having grown up in Nebraska on a small farm, not totally unfamiliar with it, but definitely different than representing the East Side and South End of Tacoma. But like I say, a lot of the same issues, and so we're able to continue some of that stuff.
All right, well, I want to ask you about that, but I wanted to also let people know this is not, even though maybe Groundhog's Day when they're watching, it's this is actually Marty Campbell, County Council member.
Yes.
Not an old City Council show that we're doing here, but we wanted to talk about just that transition from city to county council. Another one of the differences is that it's a full-time job. City council is technically part-time. We haven't had a part-time mayor in 20 years, and a lot of city council members spend an awful lot more than part-time hours doing city council work, but technically the county council is full-time.
Correct, and and it's the way the charter is set up, and you have the different charters. But I would never take away anything from my former colleagues on the Tacoma City Council and the hours that they work, because they do work far more than the part-time that they're deemed. And so it's always my hats off to the Tacoma City Council, because getting a lot done over there, and we're getting a lot done out at the county. I know I've spent quite a few hours in the office, and some of the hard part there is covering the larger areas, getting out to the meeting with the people and the groups, and that can take a little bit of time consuming, the constituent relations. And I know I'm also serving on about 11 boards and commissions, and so it can take up a fair amount of time.
Now I wanted to ask you a little bit about the district, because you mentioned that a lot of it is like the east side of Tacoma. Parkland, Spanaway certainly are areas, at least Parkland and part of Spanaway at least, are areas that have urbanizing, that theoretically in an urban growth area ought to be a city at some point in time, either annexed or incorporated. But then you mentioned the rural separator, and I want to go back, because I was here with the city of Tacoma back when the Growth Management Act passed, which of course people may not remember, but it was largely passed because of Pierce County. And the Pierce County Council, in charge of implementing growth management, one of the very first things they did was create the rural separator. Now there were all sorts of various motivations for it, but in the end, it was actually a brilliant move. It was a pro-growth move, because one of the things about growth management was to preserve, farmland, open spaces, and things like that, and direct density into existing cities. The rural separator was not really a city, was not in Tacoma's annexation plans or anything like that, or Puyallup, which is on the other side of it. So it's worked out really well, but it is kind of funny when you drive through, leave Tacoma, and you wind up in the rural separator on the county map. It really does like you've gone into a different place altogether. That's right next to it's got two cities on either side of it.
Yeah, I think you described that very well. Like I said, it's doorbelling through, and there's cows and sheep and llamas and all sorts of farm animals out there. And I think it's really great to have that close to a city, to remind us that there's differences in the way that people live and want to live, and different approaches, and I think it helps bring that conversation around about buying local. Where does your local food come from? Where does your local what does a sustainable environment look like? And farms are definitely part of that. If we want to have strong farmers markets, you've got to have farmers.
Right.
It's important.
Right, and of course you in the county, not necessarily your district, but big farms are part of what the county deals with.
Right.
And it's an area where, again, I think, well, Pierce County gets some criticism for its approach to growth management in many areas. Preserving farmland is not one of those. I think the county's done some good stuff in preserving farmlands with the assistance of various nonprofit groups, environmentally oriented land conservation types of groups. There's been a lot of good effort to preserve and protect what's left of the farmland of Pierce County.
Yes, and we can really appreciate that. And I know we've got some bills down in Olympia to help a lot of the stream management, culvert removal, kind of restoring a lot of the lands to what they were. Many years ago, I think we got ahead of ourselves and did some things that weren't long-term smart. But I think we're coming back and really looking to see how all that interconnects and plays well together.
All right.
And I think that's going to be a big challenge coming up as we are a fast-growing county, one of the fastest in the nation. How do we blend that growth in without it overwhelming us while we're making sure it's all working together?
One of the jobs of a city council member is to serve on a bunch of other boards and commissions. I assume you got some assignments like that as a county council member too. So what other things are you doing besides sitting at on the 10th floor of the county city building?
I've got on Pierce County Council, I've got 3 standing committees, which are basically our human services, our community development. I'm on our economic development, actually 4, and performance audit. But then the outside boards and commissions, there's 3 that I'm particularly proud to be serving on. First one is Workforce Central, which is really working to make sure that we have a viable and ready workforce. One of our key goals is going to be looking at people who weren't able to get their high school diploma for whatever reason. And we know that there's a hot spot through the Parkland, Spanaway area where we have a higher than normal population. How do we go out and engage them, help them get that next level of education so they're work ready? Another one that I serve on, and it's one that I served on before, is the Crystal Justin Family Justice Center. A very, very important organization here in the Tacoma Pierce County area. A lot of people don't realize that it's a joint board between the county and the city. Of course, created out of the tragedy of Crystal Brame being murdered by her husband, who was then Tacoma Police Chief. And I think it's important to remind us why we have that, as Pierce County is a county that still continues to be affected by domestic violence, disproportionately heavier than many other counties. And so some really important work there at really addressing the problems of domestic violence across our county, first and foremost. And the third board that I got appointed to that I'm pretty proud of is Pierce Transit. And it was something that while on city council, I never served on Pierce Transit. I'm glad to be coming on that from the county council level, particularly when we look at some of the expansion that we're having out that corridor that I spoke of. One of the big projects coming forth is the Bus rapid transit, tens of millions, almost hundreds of millions, that Sound Transit. A lot of people don't realize that Sound Transit, ST3 is actually funding the bus rapid transit service, which is going to be like light rail on bus wheels, going from downtown Tacoma out to the Roy Y with fast service stops all the way out Pacific Avenue. So it's actually going to serve parts of Tacoma. Again, that Parkland, Spanaway, that whole corridor, and really bring a level of service we've never seen out that way. And it's going to require more than just putting in the line, but making sure that we're developing off of it and engaging the community. And I think it can be actually a huge economic success for that area. But it's important that we recognize that that's really Sound Transit funding. That was part of it gets missed. Everyone thinks ST3 is just light rail from the airport to Tacoma. And while that's a key part of it, it's also development in connecting our neighborhoods in ways they've never been connected before, particularly our more ruralized of the out to the Rory Y, of bringing really bus service in a way it hasn't been delivered before. So that's something that I look forward to joining and knowing that that's going to be a challenge getting that word out there and talking with people, but I think it's very needed. And so those are 3 boards I'm pretty happy to be serving on.
Well, and certainly Pierce Transit is an agency that needs some attention by both county and city. I mean, there were reductions in service during the beginnings of the recession. Some of those have been restored, but not all of them have been restored. I mean, Pierce County is still underserved for the size of county and the amount of transit it has, and it's a problem going forward that we're going to address. If you're an urbanizing county, which we are,
Yep.
you've got to do two things. You've got to have transit, and you also have to protect whatever's left of your farmland so that you don't become, development from Puget Sound to the foothills of Mount Rainier.
Yes, we don't need to pave all the way to the mountain. This is true. And one of the problems Pierce Transit has is, person for person, it's underfunded. And so it's always going to have balancing issues of how do you serve high capacity areas versus areas of need. And you want to serve them both robustly, but it's always had budget constraints, which has always led it to be in a position of making tough decisions. And so I'm eager to get in there and learn more about that, and just really make sure that the people south of I-5 have a really strong voice in that.
Right. Now, I noticed the button you're wearing. It's kind of hard not to. I stand with Immigrant Families. When you were on the Tacoma City Council, that became a big issue for you. Largely, I'm not thinking largely because of your district, but you probably cared about it regardless of where everybody lived. But you did have a district in the east side of Tacoma where a lot of immigrant families settle. And if anybody doesn't believe that, all they need to do is drive down Portland Avenue and look
Right.
at the stores that are in Spanish, the signs that are in Spanish and in other languages along Portland Avenue. So because of your actions on the Tacoma City Council, the city designated itself a welcoming city. You and others worked on the establishment of a commission, not a task force or a committee, but a commission on immigrant affairs. The city began to fund a program to help with the legal challenges that folks at the detention center in Tacoma have. And I know there was even pressure to do more than that in Tacoma while you were on the city council. Obviously, you still care about this issue. You chose to wear that button here today. But the county hasn't really taken the steps that the city of Tacoma took when you were on the city council. Are you kind of saying that, hey, this is something I want the Pierce County to look at as well, or what? What are you saying with that message on your lapel?
You're correct. Pierce County has not taken the steps that the city council has yet. I do look forward to engaging the county because I really believe it is more of a county-wide discussion of how do we work with the immigrants and refugees that have come to call Pierce County home. And the city of Tacoma, it's really made us a much richer city. When you look at the Lincoln District, when you look at all throughout, you drive down and see signs in Spanish, Khmer, Vietnamese, Korean, Ukrainian. We have many rich cultures that have come to call Pierce County home and to bring both influences of their culture, but then just bringing their work ethic. People don't travel 7,000 miles to the land of opportunity to not take to not seek opportunity. There's many misnomers about how people who come here and how hard they work. Disproportionately, more entrepreneurs are foreign-born than American-born. They come here to do great things, and it's. I think we benefit greatly as a community when we embrace that, and that we provide those opportunities for growth and being part of the community, and at the same time not give in to much of the xenophobia that seems to have overtaken the nation of dividing us between us and them, because we're all us. And I really, in what was just bringing the Welcoming Cities initiative 3-4 years ago to the city of Tacoma, I had no clue it was actually going to become, I thought it would be a point of us reaching out, and it ended up being the shield by which we protected many of our citizens from threats none of us could have conceived. But when you talk with some of those people that it's helped, their stories are so rich, and they're so much part of our community, and they love our community as much as anyone else, because they don't have they left a land that was war-torn, and in many cases. And here they've grown a home. They have family. They have friends. They really love it. And I think our county, again, would really benefit from really leaning into that and moving forward with it.
I saw a study recently that just in the last week actually that talked about the issue of immigrants and the English language. And I can think back to the stories of my own grandmother who was born in Minnesota, but her parents had immigrated from Sweden. They spoke nothing but Swedish. She spoke both languages as a child, and later actually spoke so much English she forgot how to speak Swedish. When I came along, she could barely speak it at all, and then didn't speak it. Couldn't remember any words later in her life. And none of her kids, of course, never spoke anything but English. And that pattern is actually the same with immigrants today. The people who come here may or may not become familiar with English. They struggle with it, but their children are bilingual, and the third generation is completely immersed. And actually, what the study showed, if anything, that cycle is actually accelerating or compressing. Where it used to take 3 generations, now it's taking less than that before English becomes the language of that family. So even the question of assimilation, which Tom Brokaw recently got in trouble for, suggesting that people don't assimilate quickly enough, actually the evidence indicates yes, they do into the community. So at the same time, while we talked about the signs along the Portland Avenue in Spanish or in Asian languages, there's still the assimilation that is part of the American story is still happening, and actually indicates it's actually accelerating through the more recent immigrants to our community.
Hey, and it makes sense, particularly when you look at our mass media. You can watch TV in the English language much more. 3-4 generations ago, you had 3-4 channels to choose from. And now they can find all kinds of programming and be inundated through the internet and translation services. So much more opportunity, and you got places like Tacoma Community House doing so many English as a second language classes. And when you look at programs that the government puts forward where they put out flyers in multilingual, it brings them into the conversation, and being part of the civic dialogue encourages them also to learn the other languages. But as long as you don't provide things in their languages and say you just stay over there, their need to assimilate, or their desire to, as we say, assimilate, is less. But the more we bring them into the conversation, the more they want to be, part of, and the more we can learn from them too. And I found in my job that I've had in between the councils, and still continuing a little bit today, working in Salishan community, 30 different languages probably spoken there. And I've had people come in and we're able to work through the barrier. I mean, it's not as big a barrier as people think, because so many languages have so many shared words, particularly when you look at, Spanish and many words, and you're able to just work off shared concepts and really get the concept through. So it's just, people want to put up that barrier before they even try to breach it. And, and I think that's so many wrong turns we've taken in this nation is what years ago was, we appreciated it so much more than we do today.
The school districts in your new district, Tacoma plus Franklin Pierce, district go out to Bethel as well?
Yes.
Okay. Probably are more experienced with multiple languages that are spoken within their districts than maybe city or county government is. I know the city government is trying continuously to provide even its information out in different languages and finding more and more all the time that we need to do. How's the county at that, or have you learned yet? Just how aggressively is the county providing information about county services in different languages?
That's part of still what I'm learning. I know that we do it. We have a pretty good communications team out there. I know the city has taken a very hard attempt at it, and so the city's really leaning in. And I'm guessing that the county, we can always do better, and it's government. We can always do better. There's always one more language we could reach out in. There's always one more opportunity that we could take. But I see them, working. Technology is helping bridge a lot of that. But I think with anything, we can always do better.
All right. I want to go into one other little area with you because of your experience with both the city council and now newly beginning on the county council. As somebody who's done this kind of work for a long time, the elected officials frequently say, we should be working with the county on this and this and this. And people in the community say that too. And we do. We work very closely with the county on some things. We disagree with the county on things. Because cities and counties, while they're both local governments, they're very different local governments. Counties are subdivisions of the state, by state law. That you carry out things that are state law, and the state sometimes gives you money to do those things that they mandate. Not
and
often.
oftentimes
not often. I get that, and we're with you on that one. Cities are different. Cities are not subdivisions of the state. Cities are municipal corporations that have certain powers. Some cities have more powers than other cities, but they're not the same as counties.
Do you teach a class of this or something?
I've been doing it long enough. I've got these speeches down, but nevertheless, there's certainly common goals that governments can have at various levels and can work on together. But it's not just an automatic thing because we do take different positions on certain issues. Do you think that your experience, you're not the first former city council member to become a county council member. I mean, you replaced Rick Talbert, who was on the city council. Connie Ladenburg is still there, and who has experience at both state level as well as city and county. But do you think that perspective helps get past some of the divides that might occur occasionally, or the differences of opinion that occur between cities and counties?
Absolutely. I would say there's additionally two others on the county council. Derek Young, who was with the Gig Harbor
that's right.
City
Gig Harbor City Council member.
Right, and Doug Richardson, who came from Lakewood. And less of a partisan Republican-Democrat split because they are partisan seats there. You almost have a municipal caucus versus a state caucus because three of the members and the other new member that I came on with, Dave, came out of Olympia, but not as partisan as some of the others who've come out of Olympia. And they tend to see things very partisan, and they kind of see things from that state view. And you get the four of us who've come up through the municipalities, and we see it as it's constituent relations. It's about really bridging that gap with the cities, and the county is the land in between the cities, and how do we make that webbing work? How do we make that overlay work with the cities? And so it's kind of the perspective of, did you come from the state? And then are you just a function of a portion of the state in implementing the state's will? Or are you part of the web that brings the cities together? And so I think that absolutely elected service, particularly municipal level, helps a lot in really understanding what the cities need and then how you feather that into the areas in between and how you serve that connected in that buffered area.
A lot of times it comes down to, I've heard county officials say that, the county provides services within the city. Well, that's true. I mean, Tacoma is part of Pierce County, and Pierce County collects 15 cents off every dollar of sales tax generated in the city of Tacoma. Even if it didn't help generate any of that, it gets it because
Correct.
We're part of the county, and the county does provide services within Tacoma. And so that's the reasonable and fair position. But it's still nevertheless a different kind of organization. And in Tacoma, the services that the county provides are probably not as obvious. The jail, if you drive on Tacoma Avenue, you see the jail. We know the county does that. But the other stuff the county does, is actually done by other elected officials who've been on this show recently. Julie Anderson, our county auditor, who runs our elections, and Mike Lonergan, who collects our property taxes. They're kind of visible because that's a different office. But it's harder for the county council and the county executive to say, well, yeah, but we do things in Tacoma too, because, what are those things? The other guy that does some services in Tacoma is the sheriff, who does certain kinds of warrant serving things within the city of Tacoma, but he's an elected official too. So I'm giving you a chance.
I think you've answered a lot of that, but and you missed the court services.
Yes, the courts.
And managing the courts. And
how could I forget the judges?
Right.
Sorry, judges.
Yes. So that's, of course, a big part of it. They're also part of the economic development team because you don't, no one city is going to be able to do the balance that we need of economic development in the county, of a variety of jobs that serve. When you look at transportation planning, if we only plan as a city and stop at the edges of the city, then you haven't planned for success. And so again, it comes back to that integration. How do we connect Tacoma to the other cities, literally through transportation, through jobs, through education? It's all that services that need that next level that needs to be working not only in the city but across the entire area. One area I'd like to see the county taking a stronger role in, I can think of a couple. One is homelessness, which they've started to lean in a little bit on the last year, in the last few years.
Certainly has done that.
The other municipalities, I think, could do a lot more to catch up to what Tacoma's doing.
No disagreement there.
And the second would be, related but distinct too, is mental health services. And the county's failed time and time again to step up to the level that the city of Tacoma has. And I think that they and, again, other municipalities could be doing a lot more to fund our mental health services. And what's interesting, when I was running for office, often those questions would be combined, homelessness and mental health. And I just want to caution that, just because someone's homeless doesn't mean they have mental health issues. And just because someone has mental health issues doesn't mean they're going to be homeless. They really are distinct things. There are certainly an overlap where untreated mental health can absolutely lead to homelessness, but there are 1,000 other things: job loss, other medical bills, bankruptcies, a whole variety of reasons why people find themselves homeless. And so it's not, what we have to do is find that pathway back out. Is it job training? Is it just they need stability for 90 days and they can get themselves back on their feet? They just need that little bit of help. And so we have to do a better job of finding out what is the reason they're there, what's their best pathway out, and then also really getting serious about addressing mental health issues.
We've got just a couple minutes left, but I wanted to ask you this final question regarding the kind of overlap. Your new district overlaps your old district. So when you get a call from somebody that's because they know who you are, because they recognize your name, and they call you and say, "Hey, there's this problem in on 56th and Portland Avenue that I need you to address," what do you do? Do you try to address it yourself, or do you I'm sure you remember the phone number to Councilmember Ushka, and do you call her?
It depends on what the issue is. Sometimes it's just a simple, well, you just need to call 311 on that. If I can answer the question with an answer. If they need deeper services, then we'll route them to the council member, or sometimes whatever the appropriate person within the city is, because I know it. 56th and Portland now is one of my favorite areas, because that's where we just opened up the Eastside Community Center over there.
Right.
And it was something that I did a lot of work on while on city council, came to fruition about 10 months after I came off, and an absolute game changer for the east side of Tacoma. I want to, I know that kind of harkens back a little bit away from the job I'm at now, but 3,000 people showed up opening day. It's packed every day. It showed that the need was there, and I think we need similar services like that perhaps out in some parts of our county.
All right. Well, we will have you back here to talk a little bit more about the differences between county council service and city council service, but thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me. Always good.
Our guest has been County Council Member Marty Campbell. We look forward to seeing you next time here on Inside Tacoma.